here we go. So, a quadratic equation can be written in the form ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0, right? Yeah? Okay. Where a, b, and c are real numbers, so that means that they actually exist. They're not imaginary. It's all good in the hood. 1, 2, 3, 4, 82. Okay. Right? And a can't be 0. Hey, that's kind of a kicker right there, that a can't be 0. Why does a have to be a number? Why do we need a to be a number? What if a is 0? What happens to this term? Oops, have to break. Come on now. What happens to this term if a is 0? Goes away, right? And now what do I have? What? Which is? It's an L word. Linear. It's a linear function. It's not a quadratic function anymore. Okay? It becomes a linear function. Okay? So that's why a has to be some number that's not 0. Okay? And then it's in standard form of a quadratic equation. Okay? Now, there are many, many ways to go about solving a quadratic equation. Some of them are graphing, factoring, completing the square, quadratic formula. Okay? There's, a couple of different ones out there that we can all do. Okay? In those ways, we're going to focus on those 4. Okay? And we're going to leave our answers either in rational or irrational form, okay? Meaning numbers. Okay? 5, 8, okay? 3 plus the square root of 2. Okay, that's an irrational one, but it still can be an answer. Okay? Or we're going to be an imaginary number, where it's got something with an I in it. Okay? 8i. 4 plus 3i. Okay? Negative 3 plus or minus 2i times the square root of 6. Okay? Something like that. Okay? So that's what we're going to deal with today. And you've dealt with all that stuff before. Okay? So, example number 1 we're going to do by factoring, and then we're going to confirm it using the graphing calculators that you have with you right now. Okay? So, if I factor this one, now when I factor stuff, that to me tells, all right, I am going to make some parentheses here, and I'm going to have that set equal to 0. Okay? Sometimes I might refer to it as the butt cheeks, because they look like a pair of butt cheeks. Okay? All right? So now I just got to fill in some blanks. Well, what are my 2 options? Well, what multiplies together to be 4x squared? What 2 things multiply together to be 4x squared? 2x and 2x, or 1x and 4x. So I'm going to say 4x or 2x, x and 2x. Both of those multiply together to be 4x squared. Then I'm going to go look way down here. I'm going to go look at this number right there. And I'm going to say, well, what multiplies together to be 3? 1 and 3, right? 1 and 3, right? So, or 3 and 1, depending on what. So now I got to come up with a crazy combination of those. Okay? I like to start in the middle. Okay? So I'm going to start with 2x and 1, 2x and 3. Okay? So I like to start in the ones that are the closest to each other. Okay? Okay? Now, I take a quick peek back, remember, at my first one. This sign right there tells me that the signs need to be the same. Okay? So it's either got to be -1 and -3 or +1 and +3. This sign right here then tells me that those are both negative. Okay? So if I throw a negative sign in here, okay, now I see, all right, maybe I got it factored. How do I check to know, or how do I know if it's factored or not? how do I know that that is factored? You multiply it back out. Okay? Do it in your brain. Okay? 2x times 2x is 4x squared. Yes? Yes, that's what I needed. Okay? 2x times negative 3 is negative 6x. Yes'm? Yes'm. Negative 1 times 2x is negative 2x. Negative 6x plus negative 2x is negative 8x. That's what I need. Okay? And then negative 1 times negative 3 is positive 3. That's what I need. Okay? So it is factored. We got lucky. Okay? Now, what I do is I take my factors and I set each of those equal to 0. Okay? And then I go through and I solve those. Okay? So I'm going to add 1. I'm a show work kind of a guy, so that's what it's just what I do. Oops, it's way over here now. And then divide by 2 on both sides. Oops, this one, that's red. So then that gives me x equals 1/2 and x equals 3/2. Yes? Yes. Okay? Okay. Then if I wanted to, I could go back and I could check it. We're going to check it graphically, so I'm not going to necessarily do that check right now. Okay? So that's what we're going to do right now. Okay? So on the graphing calculator now, what we're going to do is, I like to, whoa, text breaks, got to get rid of that. Come on now, delete. And then, so I got to have those down. So I'm a document kind of a person, okay? So I like to start a new document because especially on the calculators that we give you, those over on the side over there, okay? You don't know who was doing what with them in the last class. I was in the last class and I don't even know what they were doing on, okay? All right? So I'm a new document always type of a person, and we don't save anything on those. We just go no. And then that should pop me up to this screen. Okay? So then on this screen, I want to say I need to add myself a graph. Okay? And my function was 4x squared minus 8x plus 3. Now, because my function was equal to 0, I can automatically put that in there. 4x squared minus 8x plus 3. Okay? I can put that in there. I can type that in that my function line. Then when I hit enter, I should get a quadratic function, which is a parabola. Shabam, there it is. Okay? Now I'm going to do a little zoom in here on my graph there, just so we can see it a little bit better. Move stuff around. Okay? So now we need to find those zeros because we had it equal to 0. So I'm going to menu, analyze the graph, and I'm going to find the zeros. Okay? Now I'm going to go over here to my computer and I'm going to do that because I want to show it kind of like how you do it. Okay? So that makes this bar come out, and you can slide your finger across the middle pad there. Now a lot of people, I will tell you this, a lot of people try and find this 0 right in here, and they get right tight to that 0. No need for that. There's no need for that. Let the computer, or let the calculator, do the work for you. So I'm going to start over here, click once, and then it drags out through there. And once I get to 1, it will tell me that that's what I'm looking for. That gives me a 0, which is 1.5. That's the 3/2 that we came up with by factoring. Then I'm going to here and I'm going to do analyze graph again. I'm going to do 0 again, and I'm going to now go for the other side, and shabam, there's that 0.51 that we were looking for, which was the 1/2 that we did on the other one. Okay? Now, I want to show you just something. You can do this if you want. If your function is not equal to 0, so let's say that my function was, instead of this, it was 4x squared minus 8x equals -3. Okay? So really all I did for this function, I just moved that -3 to the other side. Okay? So that's my function. So now I could set that equal to 0 and then go through the process that we just did. But I don't have to. I can say on this function, I can say now that on my first one, I want to go 4x squared minus 8x as my first function, and I hit enter. There that one is. And then I go tab, which gets me up into that one again, and I go -3. Bam, there that one is. And now, instead of finding zeros when I analyze my graph, I'm going to find intersections of this one. Okay? And so I'm going to look there. I'm going to look there. There's my first intersection. Okay? See, it goes a little faster on the smart board. And there's my second intersection. Okay? So both get us the exact same answers. And on those, we're just looking at the x values for them because we want to know what x is equal to. Okay? Questions on that? Fantastico. Now I need to go back in here. And then I should, we'll get that later. All right. Come on now. What? Oh, see, now my thing's way down there, and I gotta go way up here. There we go. Get it back in there, and next. Okay. When factoring, after you factor the quadratic, why is it mathematically legal to set each factor equal to 0? Well, it's legal because I say it is. Okay. It's actually legal because of something called the zero product property. The zero product property tells you that if A times B is equal to 0, then A is equal to 0 or B is equal to 0. Okay? That's what it tells you. So that makes it legal. Okay? So one or both of them have to be 0. Okay? So that's why we can do that. Completing the square. Okay? So, completing the square, the first thing is that I like to get everything equal to 0 and try and factor. Because factoring is easier than completing the square. Okay? It is. Factoring is easier than completing the square. So, what I would have to do here then is I would first distribute that 2 into there. And then that gives me x squared minus 4x plus 11 equals 2x minus 10. Get it equal to 0. I am going to subtract 2x and add 10. That gives me x squared minus 6x plus 21 equals 0. Now, I look and see if I can factor that. Okay? And unfortunately, I can't. Because the only two numbers that multiply together to be 21 are 3 and 7, which would get me to 4 or 10, and 1 and 21, which would get me to 20 or 22. Okay, if I added or subtracted them together. Okay, so I can't do that. So now I've got to do completing the square. So if it's not factorable, now I'm going to take that C value. Here's my C value. And I'm going to move that back to the other side. Okay? So I'm going to write it, and I kind of write it a little funky. I go x squared minus 6x, and then I leave that space where that C value was. I'm going to leave that space there for it. Okay? So I leave a little gap there, and I'm going to end up filling that gap. I'm going to complete the square by filling that gap. Okay? So now I like to go a little bit on the side. So on the side of my paper, I call it taking a sidebar. Okay? I look at B. My B value is negative 6 yet. Correct? Okay? I'm going to take that, and I'm going to half it. So I'm going to divide it by 2. B divided by 2 is going to be negative 3. And then I'm going to square that. Negative 3 squared is 9. Okay? Now, because I have functions, so now I can, well, come on, maybe. There we go. Now we can make that one be red, because I want it to be red. Okay? Learning stuff here now with these Macs. Okay? Exactly. Well, see, when it goes full screen, I lose that bottom thing, and I use my toolbar all the time. Okay? So this 9 here is going to fill this gap. I made my arrow just a little too long. It's going to fill that gap. Right? But mathematically speaking, what have I done? I got to do it to the other side, right? Okay. Golden rule of algebra tells me that whatever I do to one side, I got to do to the other side. I got to keep my equation in balance. Okay. So we got to add it to both sides. Now, here's the cool part. This left side factors to be x minus 3 quantity squared, which is why I do that sidebar. Okay? Because this red number is going to be in my factored form. This green number is going to be what fills my gap and puts it on both sides. Okay? And so then that's going to equal negative 12. Okay? Now, to finish this off, because we're solving, we need to take the square root on both sides. We'll do that in the purple. Okay. Square root of the left side. Square root of x minus 3 quantity squared. Just x minus 3. Square root of the right side. It's going to be imaginary because we're square rooting a negative. Okay? So if I'm thinking square root of 12, right? So this would really be square root of negative 1, square root of 4, and square root of 3, right? Right? So square root of 4 is 2. Square root of negative 1 is I. And the square root of 3 is 3. So this is really going to be 2I times the square root of 3. But what did I forget? Bless it. Nope. Because we took the square root, we've got to add in, and we're solving, we got to add in that thing. Okay? Plus or minus. Okay? And then when I go about solving it, I just add the 3 to both sides. And shabam, there is my answer. Okay? Now, the last one, the quadratic formula. Can somebody tell me, or maybe we can work it out together as the group, what is the quadratic formula? Some people sing it. There's a tune out there to, was it Pop Goes the Weasel, I think. But we also just found in the last class that there is, oh, I got rid of it. And don't be There's all these different ones. There's some One Direction. There's some Rollin' in the Deep by Adele. There's some rap song here of the John Wall. There's one down here we did Crank Dad, quadratic in the last class. Yeah, there's lots of good ones. That's awesome. That's awesome. So there's a bunch out there if you forget. Okay? All right? So, first step though is you got to have it equal to, let's see, I did it again. Maybe if I just do this, you got to get it equal to 0. So if we, whoa, tap the brakes. I don't want to FaceTime anybody. No FaceTiming. Hey, look, there's me. Okay, so we're going to first subtract 5. There they're going. Okay. So then that's going to give me 3x squared minus 6x minus 5 equals 0. And then if you are an A, a B, and a C writer outer, so then your A is going to be 3. Your B is going to be negative 6, and your C is going to be negative 5. Okay? But then you just plug stuff into the formula. So x here is going to equal the opposite of negative 6 plus or minus the square root of negative 6 quantity squared minus 4 times 3 times negative 5 all over 2 times 3. Okay? Now, you probably wrote that actually as 6 plus or minus the square root of 36 minus negative 60 all over 6, which is 6 plus minus the square root of 96 all over 6. Square root of 96 is 6 plus minus, let's see, what's 96? So 96 is 4 times 24. 24 is 4 times 6, right? So here's a perfect square, here's a perfect square, right? So that's really 4 times the square root of 6 all over 6. Bunny ears. So I got to look at those outside numbers. 6 goes into 6, but 6 doesn't go into 4. So the biggest common factor is 2, so I can divide all of them by 2. So x here is going to equal 3 plus or minus 2 square roots of 6 all over 3. And then that is my answer. That is our stopping point for today, but a couple of things before you go get the bags. First, there's been some questions about the homework. Okay? We are collecting all of the Chapter P homeworks, yes, okay? But we are not collecting them until the day of the test. Okay? So they're due sometime, hopefully next week. We'll take a test on Chapter P, but if we don't, then they're due whenever we take that test. We haven't quite figured out what day we're going to take the test yet. We're hoping for next Friday, but we don't know yet. Okay? Second thing is, remember on Monday you may have class, but you may not have class. Okay? If you don't have class on Monday, you have it on Tuesday. If you do have class on Monday, then you don't have class on Tuesday. Okay? So you either have class Monday or Tuesday. Okay? Third thing, prior to class on Monday or Tuesday, there will be some videos on It's Learning to watch. And we'll title it something along the lines of flip videos to watch before 9, 10, 9, 11. Before Monday the 10th or Tuesday the 11th. It'll be in a separate folder for it with it on It's Learning. Okay? Make sure you watch those videos before you come to class. Okay? That's all I got for you. Thanks for playing along.